The best of Money Matters. The Big Story.
Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Hongbin Jeong. Is the MRT feeling busy again, but buses seem a little emptier? New data from the Land Transport Authority shows that more people are riding the MRT and LRT in the first half of 2025, while daily bus ridership has dipped slightly compared to 2024. But despite the rebound in train usage, total public transport ridership hasn't climbed back to where it was before the pandemic hit in 2019. Are we seeing a shift in how Singaporeans get around? Well, joining us to share more is Eric Fesselmeyer, who is the Associate Professor of Economics of the College of Integrative Studies at the Singapore Management University. Hi, Professor. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, Professor, more train rides were taken in the first half of the year, with overall public transport ridership standing at 7.47 million daily trips on average between January and June. How significant is the rebound in train ridership in the first half of 2025?
Well, I think it's good news, but it's really continuing trend. Train ridership has been increasing for several years now, post-COVID, and I think that trend is going to keep continuing as we move forward.
Okay. Well, meanwhile, though, the number of daily bus rides fell slightly. Is this due to a shift away from buses towards an expanding rail network?
Yeah, I think that's right. There were several new MRT stations opened on the Thompson East Coast line last year, and I think that's affecting public transport rides. People are switching from, at least some people, from buses towards the expanding MRT network.
Right. But this overall public transport ridership figure is still below pre-COVID-19 levels, where an average of 7.66 million daily bus and train rides were logged in the first half of 2019. Now, that's 2.5% more than today's numbers. Why is this the case? What underlying factors might explain this persistent gap? Is this a temporary lag or a more permanent shift in how, Singaporeans move around?
Yeah, I think it seems to be a permanent change. I think COVID-19 really changed our commuting patterns. So as we know that more people are working from home, fewer people are going to the office every day. But let me just say that it's true that the ridership numbers are lower than 2019, but we're actually increasing steadily. So I expect that maybe within the next year or two, we're going to surpass 2019 numbers again.
Okay, but how might continued below 2019 ridership affect the financial stability of operators like SBS Transit and SMRT?
Yeah, that could be an issue. So, of course, lower ridership means lower revenue and profit. But hopefully, ridership continues to increase as it has been, as I was mentioning. And then, this won't be such an issue. But otherwise, you're going to really have to start worrying about perhaps fares or subsidies increasing.
And the LTA, I believe, has a goal of having 8 in 10 households be within a 10-minute walk of a train station. Now, alongside projects like the Cross Island Line, Circle Line Stage 6, and Jurong Region Line are underway through 2030. But how might these extensions eventually, influence ridership and economic returns, and especially as Singapore develops new lines like over at Tengah or Seletar? How might transport supply and demand evolve?
Yeah, that's a big question. So on the one hand, you have to start worrying that the MRT network has expanded so much in the past couple of decades and these future expansions that there are diminishing returns and they're very costly. So that's one thing we have to worry about. On the other hand, we are expanding population away from the central region. Towns are getting bigger, and these people don't have access to MRTs. So any expansion of MRTs in these areas would be good for these commuters and these residents.
And technology seems to be playing an increasingly big role as well. Now, the introduction of autonomous vehicles could change the landscape by allowing greater flexibility and on-demand services. But what impacts do you see AVs will have on the future of bus services? Could they reduce costs or change the way, routers are designed?
Yeah, that's something that's, I think, still to be seen. I think the technology is improving and progressing, but I don't think it's ready for widespread implementation yet. And it's also very costly. So theoretically, it could ease labor costs, but since the technology is so expensive in some cases that maybe overall costs might not actually be lower.
But what challenges then do you foresee if it's widely adopted?
Yeah, assuming that safety is not an issue, I expect that to be sorted out. I think it's mostly about the cost. So, like most technology, I think eventually it'll get cheaper and cheaper, and then it's a matter of time until it's cost effective. But right now, I don't think we're at that point yet.
Okay. Well, Singapore spends more than $2 billion annually on public transport subsidies, with plans to spend up to $900 million more over the next 8 years to improve the bus network. How do you evaluate the current level of government subsidies for public transport? Do you think the current subsidies are enough to help boost and attain the goal?
Yeah, I think that the funds are going to introduce new bus routes and more buses and more drivers, so that's always welcome. So I think it's going to be put to good use.
All right. What else then do you think, the government should implement to boost public transport ridership?
Yeah, I think the government has generally done a good job. The MRT network is much bigger. We have new buses and new routes being added all the time. And personally, I do take public transport daily. And one thing that I think like most commuters is that some lines and routes are crowded. So I think if more buses and more trains are added, that's always welcomed. And I think you always have to also consider that there's a trade-off. Adding more buses and more trains is, great for commuters, but there's always this cost trade-off where more services and higher fares and more subsidies might be needed.
Right. Well, if this trend of ridership continues and this level of ridership continues, how will this play a role in the economy here?
Yeah, so I think that I'm not so worried about that. I think that every year since 2019 that the ridership numbers have gone up, so I'm very optimistic that they'll continue to go up. And I don't think 2019 is any special year. It's just a good baseline to consider where we are compared to pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm. But then should Singapore aim to return to 2019 ridership levels? Is 2019 numbers an ideal baseline, or is there another year that we should look forward to?
No, I don't think 2019 is particularly special. I just think that it's a good baseline to compare before COVID to now. But I think generally since ridership has been increasing every year, that's a good sign, and that, as I said, I expect that to continue in the future.
Right. Some great insights from you. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was Eric Fesselmeyer, who is the Associate Professor of Economics at the College of Integrative Studies at the Singapore Management University. This has been The Big Story with me, Hongbin Jeong.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.